Hi, my name is Meredith Blecha-Wells, and I teach cello here at Colorado State University. I'm new to the area and really excited to meet the cellists around. If I can be a resource to you, please reach out. I'd be happy to work on the excerpts with you for this audition, as well as any questions that you might have about CSU or even being a cellist in professional life. Moving into the audition material, the scales are going to be pretty important. Sometimes I feel students leave those as a lower priority because they're not as significantly challenging, perhaps, as the excerpts, but they are really your first impression to the panel. So make sure you're working on them for intonation, a really beautiful sound. With the slurs, make sure you have good clarity and articulation in the left hand, and that you just really feel proud of your scales. In the Mendelssohn, this excerpt should be fun and bright and brilliant, springy. It should sound easy. Sometimes when we have things that are supposed to sound easy, that are fast and technical, we can get bogged down, and we actually need to work really hard to make them come across as effortless. So to do that, I've broken it down into kind of 4 C's, if you will: chunking, coordination, string crossings, kind of cheating there with the crossings, and character. For the chunking, I'm coming to this excerpt and thinking about breaking it down to where the problem spots are. You want to maximize your practicing, so finding those practice spots that give you trouble and working through those first is going to be important. You may find that coordination is your biggest stumbling block in this excerpt, and so making sure that the finger comes before the bow is really key. To practice coordination, of course, you can practice slow. Always practice with the metronome. You can speed it up. You can practice with opposite rhythms, so short, long, long, short, long, short. You can practice with deliberate space. And what I mean by that is putting space before the string crossings or before the shifts. So take, for example, this scale in the second excerpt. There I'm putting the space before the shift. Then I would move the space to after the shift, and notice how small my bow is going to be. So now that space is after the shift using a small bow. Using a small bow is going to be your best friend in this excerpt. Thinking about that for coordination is very helpful, as well as for string crossings. Sometimes I've seen students play really big string crossings in this, and it sounds quite sloppy that way. We want to make the string crossings as small as possible. And so what I want you to do is think about an imaginary string running between the 2 strings that you're playing on, and that you're really just rolling to the very edge of that string in trying to play the excerpt. Or you can think about kind of having your arm weight set on the A string and then just dipping down for the D string for the 1 note on the D string. I like to practice my string crossings with double stops. So for example, this section, I would practice as a double stop. And then I can break it down from there into single strings, but it really tightens up the string crossing. My next C is character. This piece requires lots of piano, pianissimo, light, effervescent playing, but it also has some accents, and it has some sforzandos and crescendos, so be aware of where you are in the music. Certainly keep the dynamic, or the accent rather, within the dynamic that you're playing. So I think sometimes the accents can be overdone. Think about them being led by the left hand, and don't force the forte and crescendo too much in the end of the second excerpt. That should always have some ring to it. When you're going between excerpts, make sure you adjust the feeling between the right hand on the low string and then the upper string excerpt. I don't think they feel quite the same because the G string is going to be so much thicker than the A string. So check in with that first finger and make sure it's not being too scrubby when you get to the higher register excerpt. And finally, ring is king in the Mendelssohn, and always as a good string player, right? So I want you to listen for your ring in your 8th notes, in your quarter notes, and definitely the last note of every excerpt. Moving on to the Beethoven. The Beethoven is all about rhythm and seamlessness. So we want to make sure that we're really subdividing carefully in this excerpt. A lot of times I've heard students approaching this excerpt for the first time, and it stumbles into a triplet rhythm. So really practicing with the idea of the group of 4 can be very helpful, and even saying it out loud. 3 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. If you can count out loud like that, it will translate much better when you have to be silent, right? So making sure that you can really own that skill is a really big asset in this excerpt. Once you're feeling good about that, make sure you're also thinking about the phrasing, because I have definitely seen where we get stuck, 3 E and a, 1 E and a, right? So not being too vertical, but thinking more horizontally about the phrasing as we keep that subdivision in mind. Just be aware, measure 5. A lot of times I've noticed when students learn this for the first time, the rhythm is not accurate. So just check out that rhythm change there, okay? Thinking about dynamics in this excerpt, the fortes, they should be warm. They should be within the spirit. And so even though they are subito, be careful that we don't come down again too aggressively with like a K sound or vertical sound to them, but instead think rounded, warm forte. Be aware of also the dynamic changes. Some of them are subito and some have a crescendo, so just check that out. In both excerpts, be thinking about how balanced the vibrato can be as you shift weight from finger to finger, keeping it as seamless as possible, keeping your shifts as clean as possible, and keep working for that intonation. Those fourths are tricky, but keep after it. It'll be worth the work. I wish you all the best of luck with this, and please feel free to reach out if you have questions. Thank you.